I imagine we humans have been wildly curious creatures for a long, long time. Before verbal and certainly before written language, we have been asking questions and experimenting. We have learned how to harness fire, weave clothing, purify water, make candles, and print books. We've learned to grow and breed grains, vegetables, and many other things. We have learned to build homes, roads, and bridges. We have learned how to make boats, submarines, and scuba gear. We have learned to do so many surgeries, live better with pharmaceuticals, and vaccinate against disease. We have learned to make planes, trains, and automobiles. We have gone to the moon, deep into the oceans, and are learning more and more about our minds and inner workings. This phase of planetary life has been so marked by humans that some have proposed giving it the name Anthropocene. It's a geological epoch that reflects how humans have become a planetary force for change, specifically with an eye toward our impact on the planet's climate and ecosystems. It's a complex legacy we are living and shaping by how we go through our days collectively, which is not how we usually imagine our lives, having been tricked into believing in individuality by our dominant culture. Anthropocene is a scientific name that doesn't exactly say what it should. That as a species we have been, through our consumption of the Earth's resources, changing life on Earth in ways that only glaciers, volcanoes, the supercontinent breaking apart, and asteroids have had on life here. We are curious creatures, always wondering what more we can learn, often for the purpose of improving our lives. I am eager for a time when we turn that curiosity more fully toward being in right relationship with ourselves and the planet we call home. We have learned to experiment and explore, to build and dream, though our energy is either mostly dedicated to out in the world or space or whatever, navigating landscapes and moonscapes and the galaxy and beyond. Sometimes it is dedicated to turning inward, exploring our mental, emotional, and spiritual landscapes. We do this through meditation and other practices. And we have gotten really, really good at curiosity for science. We have not made as much progress at the responsibility and curiosity of our relationships, of being human together, or of being stewards of the earth. We haven't worked out how to be in right relationship with the spaces between us. Some parts of the world are doing okay in this area, but many are not. Our society is so divided, and not just ours. We look at those around us as enemies instead of neighbors. Back when I lived in Kent, our UU congregation would sometimes do interfaith activities with a few other churches and the local Islamic center. Once, the imam spoke about our gathering, naming the importance of connection across difference, and quoted from the Quran, Surah 49, Ayah 13. There are many translations, of course, but one is, "O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another." That we is Allah or God, proclaiming that they have made each of us different so that maybe we could say that we have something to talk about. We are different because difference invites us to ask questions and to consider different opinions and viewpoints and experiences. Difference is a friction that is meant to create opportunity so that we all might learn and grow. Difference is meant to stir our natural curiosity, meant to draw us closer to one another. Thinking in particular about our Universalist ancestors, I would say that it is in appreciating the difference across humanity that gives us a better appreciation of the vastness of God or love. It is so much bigger and greater than we can understand with our limited human minds, to the point that sometimes it's like we don't even try. I mentioned a while back that I was moved some months ago listening to a podcast from the Convocation Unscripted, their September 26, 2025 episode titled Patterns from the Past, Lessons for Our Future. During that episode, I was struck by historian of Christianity and advocate for progressive Christian faith, Diana Butler-Bass, sharing about her recent experience on a learning retreat in Ireland, where she got to hear about one of the ways the troubles in Ireland began to ease. Even if we don't remember it well, many of us remember hearing about the violence that was part of daily life in Northern Ireland for generations. There was intense, deep into their bones hatred for members of the Irish Republican Army and Sinn Féin and the British and many, if not overwhelmingly most people in the country. It was a political war waged by both sides, but it also became a religious war, as the political players were also divided by religious faith and practices. Those decades were bloody, culminating with the beginning of the time known as the Troubles in 1968. The Troubles ended in 1998 with the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. The Troubles was a time of even greater conflict, with rioting, paramilitary and state violence, guerrilla warfare, assassinations, tit-for-tat killings, bombings, and massacres. More than 3,600 people were killed and more than 50,000 more were injured, and the entire area was living with mental, emotional, and sometimes spiritual trauma. I don't know if any of you have seen the Banshees of Inisherin, but I expect that it's that kind of experience, probably similar to what most of us may have seen in TV or movies as gang-related violence, where one side does something, the other side retaliates, and they go back and forth with increasing escalation, causing extensive harm and death. Bass shared that during her visit, she learned about the secret peace process that began in the early 1970s, when two Catholic priests began wondering what they could do to move their divided country toward peace. They committed together to finding ways to be in relationship with their Protestant neighbors. First, the Catholic clergy reached out to Protestant clergy who they thought might be open to considering conversation between the two sides. It was very slow going, but over time they began to increase the circle, inviting in trusted lay people from both sides. At one point, a weekly Bible study group was formed with both Catholics and Protestants. They took an approach that I think Krista Tippett captures with these words from her book, Becoming Wise, an Inquiry into the Mystery and Art of Living. She writes, "I can disagree with your opinion, it turns out, but I can't disagree with your experience. And once I have a sense of your experience, you and I are in relationship, acknowledging the complexity in each other's position, listening less guardedly. The difference in our opinions will probably remain intact, but it no longer defines what is possible between us." It was a deeply secretive process, with people sneaking around and overcoming physical obstacles like walls that divided places to make these meetings happen. There was no agenda, just people being willing to be open to hearing and sharing about their experiences and about what might have come up in the news that week, much like how the convocation itself is set up. The level of risk was so great that there are still people who have not disclosed to anyone, almost 30 years later, that they had a part in this work. Someone shared that one day they had looked out on the group of people gathered, and one of them had looked around the room and realized that every person there had someone in their lives who had been murdered in the violence. So the risk was great. It was the risk of backlash, of being found out that they were participating, but also the risk of being willing to be vulnerable with people who represented those who had caused trauma in their own lives. These conversations were not part of the big peace process that we may know a little bit more about, that political process, which some clergy did participate in, that resulted in the changed political landscape for Ireland with the Good Friday Agreement that remains in effect today. And it has not resolved all the issues in Ireland between different political groups and religious identities. But it did lay the groundwork for reconciliation to begin among those in the whole community, people who were able to consider, for the first time in generations, being curious about their neighbors. There have been a number of other groups that created processes, including at least one that was made up of both Catholics and Protestants, who committed to attending funeral services for anyone who was killed during the violence. Being able to show up for each other on one of the worst days of anyone's life, demonstrating that a different way is possible, even on those terrible days, was a way to begin writing a different story, one that could be filled with more peace and ease and kindness and gentleness and good neighbors. There's a generosity that comes by being fully present to others, a generosity that can lead us toward relationship. As Tippett writes, the question of what it means to be human is now inextricable from the question of who we are to each other. It's a tender experience to sit with another in their grief and anguish, especially when the impulse to fix or do something is stifled. The problem is much too large for one person to try to address, even more so in a space so fraught and fragile. I keep coming back to this, that it is important to hold one another accountable, that we protest the wrongs and harms and oppressions, and that we open ourselves or move beyond our own stuff to witness to one another, that we might learn to find ease in risk, to borrow a phrase from the poet John O'Donohue, as we seek to know and to be known, and strive to live in the world in a way more in alignment with our values and our hope to leave the world better than we found it. Tippett again writes, love is the only aspiration big enough for the immensity of human community and challenge in the 21st century. Love is another word that is a bit or a lot ruined, something we routinely speak of as something to fall into and to fall out of. But as a piece of intelligence about what makes us human and what we are capable of, it is a virtue and way of being we have scarcely begun to mine. People who have turned the world on its axis across history have called humanity to love. It's time to dare this more bravely in our midst, and dare learning together how love can be practical, creative, and sustained as a social good, not merely a private good. All this to say, my prayer for today is that we learn to turn toward each other with the same holy curiosity that we do with so much of the world, that we can learn to gather in hope, compassion, and strength, to borrow a phrase from UU singer-songwriter Jim Scott, that we gather in hope, compassion, and strength across our differences. May we learn ourselves how to hold love at the center, inspiring curiosity and care, that we might get to know one another. If you would please rise and lift your voice in song with me for our closing hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.